everyone. We are back on Facts and Two Cents. This is Pamela and
this is Petal.
Awesome. This channel is for the statistics. Harry, Megan, um, Archie, now Lily,
Baby Lily,
baby Lily, and Daria, Pula, Guy, and the chickens.
That's right.
Yes, we don't forget the chickens. And like we always say, we are biased and petty, and this is the show for the success. So if you don't like it, then too bad. Too bad.
Sorry. We are who we are.
We are who we are. Awesome. All right. So today we wanted to talk about the whole debacle that Buckingham Palace and the Queen about banning what do you call it again? People of color and any foreigners, minorities, pretty much from occupying high level or clerical roles within the royal households, right? And this bombshell dropped a couple of days ago by The Guardian. And I believe, who was one who wrote the article again? David Pegg and Rob Evans, I think.
Yeah,
okay. David Pegg and Rob Evans. But they wrote the article in The Guardian about, and I think what had happened was they were actually on a mission for something else, and they came across that. They were looking into the Queen's consent, where Parliament gives the Queen, what was it? Oh, God, I wrote it down.
They gave them permission to hide their funds. This actually came out earlier in the year. So,
exactly.
They lobbied Parliament to be able to hide their money from the British people.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yes. So by so doing, they found this document that literally the Queen's chief financial manager in 1968 actually said that, right? That they would not be hiring any colored people or foreigners into any clerical roles except domestic roles. And I was like, wow. So you want to hire people that you claim to represent the Commonwealth and like go there and use their money, take their jewels, steal from them, and then pretend you're all in like helping them. But what you see, how you see them is domestic roles. So it goes against what you claim you stand for in terms of like extending a hand and trying to help people. You're helping them into domestic roles, not into the caliber that you think that you see yourself. They're not worthy of being in other roles. And you know, and what is your take on that? I mean, I know that you've also read it.
Yeah, you know, I think it's not just they are exempting, they are banning people. Is the fact that when the politicians came up with this, you know, this thing to ban discrimination in the workplace against Black and Asians or, you know, ethnic minorities and foreigners, is the fact that the royal family, they would not allow this bill to be debated in Parliament unless they are exempted from this rule.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you want to exempt yourself
unless you have intentions of doing something?
Why would you even want to go that route of getting an, and if you don't get the exemption, you're not going to give consent to where, and if you don't give consent, that means discrimination will continue all throughout England with no law to protect Black and brown people. Why would you even do that? So that it's such a bigger issue than just people working at Buckingham Palace. Because you were willing to withhold that from all people in all walks of life, in all different sectors in England, just because you can't get exemption for yourself.
But the key thing is, why do you need an exemption? You know, I mean, that's like we said, like, why do you need an exemption? Is unless your motives and your whole
that you want to discriminate.
Yeah, you want to discriminate. You know, you don't want to be held accountable. You want to freely do what you want to do and say what you want to say, and treat people the way you want to treat people without any kind of accountability. And that just says a lot, you know. And so this is why I can see how, again, we're going back to the baby's name, how people are feeling certain ways. But the truth is, the monarch, Elizabeth, is not just, this is like rotten from beginning, right? From slavery. This is the mentality. Elizabeth was born into it, and she inherited it, and she made no difference.
Exactly. And the thing about it too is kind of like, I think even say again, going back to her, it's like yes, they're saying, her courtiers, but as they always say, fish rots from the head, you know? And they are perpetuating the behavior that they see the head of their organization or the head of the monarchy doing. If this is something she did not want, they would do something about it. You know what I mean? And not, and there's just the idea that, not only that, they relegated Black and brown people to, say, domestic roles. Even in that situation, it's like they will look at the application, not that they would hire them. They have excluded Black and brown people, obviously, from the courtiers, the people that are close to her making the decisions. They excluded them from the clerical roles. And even up until 1994, whatever, they still had no Black and brown people anywhere close. It's kind of like they don't mind.
I think the 1990s. I think 1990. It's when it said Andrew Morton wrote a report about it, 1990. Even then, it didn't have any
Black
face in the royal echelons, right? There was no high level Black person there. It was all the domestic roles were filled with people of color.
And it's only a few.
Only a few, yeah.
Only a few. Yeah.
And even 1991, Philip Hall also said the same thing. It still hadn't changed in 1991. So
exactly.
And in 97, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the palace basically said, responded to what Philip Hall had written about them and in his book, and his research published. And they said, they were not really monitoring the number that the people that they hired to ensure that there was equality. Like, how do you even say that?
Oh, it's the thing about it too, even along those lines. When they said that they weren't monitoring, which is they weren't monitoring Buckingham Palace, they weren't monitoring St. James Palace, which is where Prince Charles was at the time. Now he's at Clarence House, but back then his base was at St. James Palace. They said we don't have a policy of monitoring, but we have 3% of our
how do you have 3% if you're not monitoring?
Minority. And then, Buckingham Palace, well, we have 5%, which is what the mandate is. Well, Prince Charles had 70 employees. 3% is 2.
Yeah.
2 people out of 70 employees were Black. Buckingham Palace, 5%, 27 people. In Buckingham Palace, out of 550 people. So it's 620 people. You have 29 people who were Black and brown people.
Right.
And looking about, and you think in terms of how they look at Black and brown people, especially then, you can only imagine what the roles that these Black and brown people.
Oh, well, they already said that. There were domestic roles. There was no one in any, really. If there was, maybe 1 or 2, but overall, it wasn't a common thing. It wasn't let me go interview and let me chart a career path from domestic life to clerical role. It was just not. It was a ban. You weren't going to go anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I noticed what they said. It's they said what they were doing was they weren't monitoring the people that were actually working there. They were monitoring the applications that were coming in from Black and brown people.
Right.
So we don't even know if anybody who was Black and brown were actually working there.
So maybe the 3% was the application.
The applications of people. And
read between the lines, folks. Read between the lines.
And also the fact that too is kind of they were also saying, that people were well, this is a document from the 1960s and 70s. And it's no, in 2010.
Equality Act replaced the other acts.
From the 70s. And what it is so now the Queen's exemption is up until today.
Yeah.
Right now, the Queen is exempt from having to follow the law, the anti-discrimination law in her household. Also, people who work in her household cannot sue her. They can't take their complaint to court if there's any discrimination against her. If there's any discrimination complaints, either from Black and brown people or from women.
Yeah.
You cannot go take them to court.
And so that's why when the news came out and the palace response was like, oh, this is a secondhand source, it's coming from a secondhand source and you can't trust it, blah, blah, blah. We're like, well, there's a document and the Queen still is exempted, so which part is not true?
Right. Notice they didn't say, notice
they didn't deny it.
Say, right.
They didn't deny it, they just said it's from a second source. Yeah, I was like, the Queen is still exempt from any kind of lawsuits for discriminating, and so which part of what the Guardian is saying isn't true, right? It's like, come on, you know what I mean?
And that is the same arrogant attitude they had if you look at all the response they've given from when they were asked in the 90s, with Prince Charles and his, well, we hire 3%. All of their responses have been along the same lines, you know? And it's just like, there is no one remorse. There's no sense of, well, we apologize for these policies. None of that.
No, there's no humility. It's simple. It's no humility.
None. Completely arrogant.
There's no humility.
Yeah.
I mean, they have this audacity and this gut and this gall to say what they want to say without even realizing the implications of it, right? For instance, to say that regarding the document, to not even acknowledge that the Queen is still, you know what I mean, still is exempt, and to just say, oh, this is from a second source. Like, how dumb do you think people are? Here's the document. They have the document. This is what it's in your archives, and they have the doc. It's online. Anybody can see it. Anybody can read it. But it reminds me of some Trumpism a little bit, like just not, you know,
it is exactly that.
You know, like the fact is in front of you and be in denial of it. Well, deliberately be in denial so that people will, you know, so that the more you say no and it's fake, that people will believe that. But no, we have facts and we can read, you know?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that with the monarchy is, they know that the majority of people, especially in the UK, especially in England, they wouldn't go back and research. They will just take what they said as gospel. They're just relying on, And if you notice, one of the things, you know, it's so funny, I tweeted about this the other day. I'm like, one of the things that I've known and I know about right-wing white supremacists, they will never apologize.
Yeah.
Don't ever expect them to apologize. They will gaslight you. They would make excuses. They would, you know, do whatever it is. They will never, ever apologize.
Yeah.
They will look you in the face and lie to you and just basically, gaslight you and make you appear or make you feel like you're wrong for even bringing the question, or you're stupid for even bringing the question to them.
Yeah.
That they will never, ever apologize. Don't ever expect the royal family to apologize. They are white supremacists to the core.
Right.
And that brings us right back to the Queen. As wonderful, and I'm sorry, I'm not Meghan and Harry, so I don't have that relationship. So I could say she is white supremacist. And that is why when you see now how the white supremacists, even American right wing, how they embrace her, they know their own. They know their own, and that's why they embrace them, because they are one and the same.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. And I think that's why when Meghan was talking about the racism, it wasn't far-fetched. It's so true. People are beginning to really connect the dots. I mean, most of us already knew, but I think people who were on the fence are beginning to see that this is actually real. D.L. Hughley actually posted a Twitter, and it was like, Meghan was right all along. Gotta believe Meghan, because this is true. I mean, you can't switch your mindset from 1960 all the way to 2010 when you've been doing the same thing over and over for decades. All of a sudden, treat your great granddaughter-in-law, your granddaughter-in-law differently, or have the rules changed for her. embedded in them. It's their thought process. It's their default, right? They default to racism. It's what they are used to doing. They have no other comparison than who they are and what they believe is to be true, which is not reality, but it is their reality. So they dispense that form of attitude towards everyone without realizing the whole world is changing and revolving, and you are the only one in the middle acting a fool, and everybody's noticing, right? And the clothes are coming off.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is there was, and I'm going to post this article because I should have brought it up and I actually forgot to, so I don't have it in front of me. But he said that he wrote an article and then they did a documentary about this very thing.
Who wrote an article?
One of the writer. And he said he wrote an article and he also did a documentary about this very thing, about the Queen and won her exemption, also about not hiring Black and brown people in the monarchy.
Yeah.
And it was there, it was great. Not one person, not one news outlet in England picked it up.
Look at that.
And he said that is the thing, one of the big things that the Queen knows is that she has the cover of the press.
Right.
They will cover for her.
Well, it's a good transition.
They will be silent.
It was a good transition because now let's go to the rotor, right? The press, nothing has been said.
Nope.
Nothing has been printed.
Completely silent.
It's like, how odd is that? That nothing. Like they are trying to push the Jubilee and all that, trooping colors. The costumes.
Princess Ida's costumes.
I'm like, shut up. Like, really, who cares? Like, this is huge. And the fact that for me, the Black British people are not like protesting right now, I don't understand. It's like, this is somebody who is like sitting on your neck. Like, she refuses for you to, yes, you might have a few people who are in high places, but majority of you are not, and you're struggling, So the British people, or BBC specifically, is so quick to point out American racism, but say nothing about their own racism. BBC has said nothing so far. I mean, as far as I know, if there is, then I stand corrected, but nothing I know of that they've said anything right now. And this is a huge story. Why hasn't the BBC said anything? Why hasn't all these other tabloids who are so quick, the Queen is 90-something years old and he's so sad, and Harry and Meghan are going to kill the Queen. No, the Queen is going to kill herself because she's a racist and she's trying to, treat Black people and minority, Asian and foreigners bad and worse off. How about that? How about you talk about that? Expose that. That's where the healing comes from, if you talk about it.
Yeah. And, it's so weird. It's like, not weird, but it's like you look at, I remember going through I literally went through all of their Twitter feeds. And the only two people that actually mentioned it, Omid Scobie and Russell Myers. I was a little surprised to see Russell Myers mention it.
You might have stepped in the wrong place.
From all the others, whether it's Camilla Tominey, whether it's Rebecca English, Robert Jobson, Richard Palmer, Chris Shipp, all of them. Not one word. Victoria Arbiter.
Well, because they've sent them a letter. They've been all given instructions. Stay mute.
Zero. And that is what that writer was saying. The Queen knows she will never change this because she knows that the press will black it out.
Yeah.
They will completely hide it. Yeah. And the majority of Brits, because they rely on tabloids for their information, they rely on these royal reporters for their information. And if these royal reporters if they don't say anything, they either don't know or they don't go searching. And
they're told not to say anything. Or they're told not to say anything, and they keep quiet because they get instructions from the upper. Yeah.
And
the
it's like,
still runs the media.
Journalists.
Yeah. So when Harry and Meghan said that there is this contract behind the curtains, the invisible contract, is exactly what they're displaying right now.
Yeah.
Because if you are a journalist, and you're not a journalist, but if you're claiming you're a journalist, then whatever the news is, you report on it. You do your investigative duty, you get the facts, and you talk about it, whether it's something you like or not, you present the facts and let the people decide. But for you to choose what to feed the people and hold back on the truth, that's not journalism.
Nope.
That's
it's certainly not. And
that's a paid media.
And instead of speaking the truth and being actual journalists, they come up there instead, and you notice how at the same time they dropped the Jubilee stuff for 2022, and then the Diana, that horrible wedding dress. I'm like, the ugliest thing in the world.
Diana even didn't like her dress. She didn't even like her dress.
It was like, how ugly is that thing? But that's going off the point.
Wait, but when she had it on, listen, I gotta go back when Diana had that dress on. When I was a kid, listen, that was phenomenal to me. I have to say, it was like beautiful. Yeah, I was a kid. It was like
for me, she just looked like she was swallowed in that big old thing. It's like a whole bunch of fabric and this tiny little person.
It was just, listen, we were kids and that dress looked, the train was long and we were just like fascinated. Okay, that was something.
Okay.
Now I can look back and be like, ooh, okay, that wasn't. But at that time, it was fabulous. I'm sorry. That dress was fabulous at that time. So.
But it's just, for me, and again, when I think of journalists, it comes with a sense of integrity. You know what I mean? Yeah. To look at these people, to know that this story is there, and they choose instead to be reporting about something 2022 Jubilee and costumes and completely. And that's again to see how, if you are affected or if you cared anything about the Black community in your country, and you're a journalist, and instead of speaking out about this, you choose to share about Jubilee, then that tells you that you don't care. This doesn't affect you in any way at all. Say what you think, speak the truth, and then hold them accountable. Don't just take the nonsense that they tell you, the ridiculous response that is like, really, they might as well not said anything.
When the news came out,
to the fire.
Hold on. When the news came out, on LBS, that channel on there. LBC had Dr. Shula on, and Dr. Shula was saying, the question to her was like, is she surprised? And she's like, no, I'm not surprised that this happened, that the Queen has a ban on. And then Dr. Shula was like, I don't think anybody's surprised, most Black people. And this white guy who's on the radio said, I'm surprised, I'm quite surprised. But that tells you something. Like, no matter what you say to them, for some reason, there's a blockage. They can't see, they can't hear what is going on. How could you be surprised unless you're refuting the fact that slavery happened, unless you're refuting the fact that, this was is an imperialism and colonization, unless you're refuting the part, then yes, you'll be shocked. But if you realize that these things took place and are still taking place, why would you be shocked?
I honestly don't think they're shocked. I think they're shocked it came out. They have all been benefiting from the racism. They all know it's there. I don't believe for 1 minute any of them are shocked. They've all been perpetuating this behavior the whole time. They are shocked that it came out.
Yeah.
So I don't buy any of them saying like, and it's definitely not while she's been screaming at there's this thing, you know what I mean? If you never know before, you know now.
Yeah.
I don't buy that I am shocked nonsense at all.
But the British people tend to be consciously oblivion to what is going on. When it comes to the Queen, it's like she's supposed to be, quote unquote, one of the most powerful people in the world, but they treat and speak of her as such fragility that she has no say. What happens to empowerment of women? She's supposed to be this powerful woman and powerful to do what she does and rule people and enslave people. That is not someone who's fragile. That's someone who's seen the worst of the worst and has decided to, keep moving and not really, comment on things. She's heard things, she's seen things. The things that she's seen, if any of us are to see those things, we will be, destroyed mentally and seek help. That's why they call her the cold, whatever. She's really cold. She's seen so much. So that's not a fragile person. she has seen the worst of the worst. So she's experienced them because she is enforcing those things and allowing those things to happen. Churchill did not go to India and destroy all those people in India and report to her for her to be like, oh, stop it. She only had a cup of tea afterwards and moved on. So how is she fragile? She is not fragile. She knows exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, they just have this mentality of treating her like this fragile little lamb. Yeah. And it's just like, I understand she's 90 something years old and she is, especially now, but it's kind of like, when Prince Philip died and she was in, at the funeral and she was sitting by herself. And it's just like, look, I understand the symbolics, like she didn't want to, show the world like, okay, if everybody else is having a funeral by themselves, that she has people. But I'm like, she didn't have to. She arrived at the funeral with one of her aides. She could have had the aide sit right there. Yeah. You know what I mean? She didn't have to be alone. Stop treating
I don't even know what she was trying to say with that whole statement. It's like,
well, because of the pandemic, people weren't allowed to gather in groups and stuff like that, and there's only a few people. So she wanted to, acknowledge that. But don't treat it as if she had to do that. Yeah. When she arrived, like there are pictures of her arriving with one of her aides.
So like, where's the
she didn't have to sit by herself. She is vaccinated. Her son is vaccinated. We have pictures of them together. Yeah. Prince Charles could have sat there with her. She sat by herself, and that was a choice. Yeah. Stop treating her like, oh, my little lamb is sitting by herself. How it's a sad picture, yes, but that was a choice.
She chose this. Yeah.
It's just like this idea of treating her like, she can do. I even heard like a royal reporter was like, you never argue with the queen. You never disagree with the queen. Like,
they treat this woman as though she's God. Nobody ordained her as God. God is like, how dare you guys to make a human who I wake up every day and give breath to equate her to my status. That's probably what God is saying. It probably feels to them. It's like, she doesn't even believe in God, really. If she does, she won't be treating people the way she's treating people. So that's just falsehood. That's not a true Christian. It's like, seriously. I mean, none of us is perfect, but for you to really go out and enslave people and do all kind of things and still like have the ban and trying to be, shady in your dealings with Parliament and like exempt yourself, that is not someone who is following the scripture. So her going to church on Sundays every day and Wednesdays and Thursdays. I don't know how many times she goes to church. What does that mean if you're not really being an example?
Exactly. I mean, and especially too, as a woman, to be head over a monarchy where women, if they're abused, and if they are, mistreated, and if it's sexism, any of those things, they cannot bring charges. They cannot, and I'm like, they can't take you to court. Nope. You are presiding over there where, if you've seen videos of how the royal family treat their staff, it is horrendous. And to know that these women and, minorities cannot take you to court. Like that's what you preside. I'm like, are you serious?
Yep, she is. She was, and she still is serious. But speaking of that whole band, there's Richard Stokes, right? His name is. He was this. It seems like he was adopted by a white guy, a white father.
Yes, I saw pictures of him with his real mom, and then he was also. It's like a big extended family, like he's adopted. Yeah,
I didn't see that picture. Just when I read the Guardian,
the article. Yes,
sorry, that's what I'm looking for.
He was adopted into the Stokes family.
The Stokes family. And so his dad was actually really the one who encouraged him to go because he knew he was very interested in the military and all that stuff. So encourage him to go work for the palace, and how excited they must have been when he got accepted. They probably didn't know he was Black when they saw his name. It's just
well, no, what it is actually in Prince Charles in '86, Prince Charles was because there were no Black people in the military, in the armed forces, especially those that were guarding the palace. Guarding the queen. Mm-hmm. And so Prince Charles was really about making sure that, that they bring in and they, break down that color barrier and bring in minority people, Black and Asian people. And Richard Stokes, his father heard about it and encouraged him, because he was really into the military, and encouraged him to be. So he became the first Black person to join Grenadier Guards. And those are those famous guards that you see protecting Buckingham Palace in the red thing, whatever. Yeah. And so he became, in 1986, became the first Black person. Actually, it was in the news and all of that, that he became the first Black person to join.
With that really highlighting the struggles that he went through. So they only celebrated that he became, but nobody ever talked about the bullying, right? Just like the racism that he faced. He was tortured, horrendous racism. And, happened to be the only Black person there. Cigarettes put in his food, bananas thrown at him, cuss words, slurs. It's amazing that he even survived the training. That's amazing.
Yeah, he said the first day he got there, where he went, the whole platoon he walked in and they all walked out.
Yeah.
And just spitting all these racist, words at him. Yeah. And so he suffered horrible racist abuse for 3 years, and then he quit. He did a Meghan Markle, and it's just like, it was a Meghan Markle before it was a Meghan Markle.
Yeah, I think he was there for 4 years, and he just I'm done.
Yeah, he's like, no one deserves to be treated the way I was treated. Yeah. And he said even his dad, wrote to Prince Charles to encourage him to not quit, and he's like, nobody. To be treated like this. And
I even wondered why his dad had to do that. Did he not believe his son? Is that what he was saying? That's a whole different topic, but I was just wondering, if your son is telling you this is what's happened to me, why do you want him to go back into that place? Just because of prestige? Because it makes you feel better that your son is working at a place that makes you feel, and I can get it. Parents can be proud about certain things.
Well, he is also, his dad is white. His dad is white. Especially those times, he obviously didn't get what the racism, he didn't I guess he didn't get that, what that meant to a Black, and to be in a unit of 700 white men, and you are the only Black, 700, and you are the only Black person, and be treated with all kinds of racist abuse. And he's even said he didn't even realize that he was the first Black person.
Yeah. And then to come to find out that, from his words, all this time there was a ban and he didn't know. And that explains a lot of things that he definitely went through. Because to think about it, there was no way upwards for him. It wasn't like he was going to move because it was lucky that he got to that place, and they probably felt like, we dropped the ball on that one. even though Charles was encouraging it, Charles at that point didn't have anything to say. The courtiers were running those things. Right?
Yeah.
And so for some reason he got through, and they're like, well, that's going to be a lesson for anybody else who's trying to get through. We're not going to make your life miserable, which they did. Right. And so now he's like, man, so all this time, had he stayed and wanted to move upwards, whatever other levels that were there, he wouldn't have been able to.
No, he never would have been. And the thing with Prince Charles, it was so hypocritical. Because in 1986 or whatever, to get you, when Richard Stokes came in, it was Prince Charles who really was criticizing the military for not getting Black people. Well, in 1994 is when they went and when the Guardian was trying to find out, well, why aren't there Black people in the palaces? It was that time when Prince Charles was like, well, we don't really monitor to make sure that there is equality. And so that's what they were saying. Well, wait a minute, you are criticizing the armed forces because the armed forces don't have Black people, but yet you're not even paying attention to in your own house if you have equality in your own house. Yeah. And that's the thing about the royal family. They don't mind you go work for them in their in their kitchen and clean their bathrooms. They don't mind you go serve them in the military, but you're not gonna be in my house.
Yeah.
I don't want you close to me
close
in
to me,
my house. I don't want you around. I don't want Black and brown bodies around me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing. Yeah.
So that's why it's not far-fetched what Megan said, that somebody was questioning unborn Archie's skin color. It's not far-fetched at all. It's so true. I believe it completely. There's no reason why she will lie. I believe Harry, they sold Harry, and they probably said worse things to Harry. And
I believe so
Harry,
too.
and that's what Harry didn't want to say, because if he says it's going to be out there, and Archie's going to grow up and hear it, and he's going to protect Archie at any cost, right? Because once it's out, and Archie's going to grow up and Google and realize this is what his family said about him. Now, it's up to them to tell Archie if they want to, but it's not for the whole world to know. That means it was really deplorable. It was worse.
Yeah. You know? I totally believe. I'm like, these people, they don't mind you. They'll even give you money. They'll pay for you, whatever. But don't you dare try to come and be part of their household. They don't want you in their household.
No, they don't want you in their household. Yeah. They don't pay for anything. They don't do anything. They don't generate, well, they can generate money for the royal family, but they don't really do anything just to show up and take the British people's money. And then they keep paying for them and then complain when somebody says, you know what, I'm going to take a step back and not use your money and make my own money. They have an issue with that. It's like, how what is your brains?
You know what's so sad about that too is with Richard Stokes is he left in 1990, and 16 years later he went back to one of their ceremonies for the Grenadier Guards. And you know what? 16 years later, they had only one Black man.
Yeah,
I mean, nothing. And he was so, he just felt so demoralized, like this is never going to change.
Yeah.
One.
Well, how could it change when there's a law, there's a ban? How could it change when there's a written document that bans them from happening that? Unless they own up to it, that's like, yeah, it's not going to change. It's what it is. They've, and it's still, as we speak, it's still in existence, whereby if anything were to happen, they can, sue the Queen or take the Queen to court or anybody else in the royal household. So that means it's still there. They can do whatever they want to do. You have nothing to say. You can do anything about it. Take it or leave it. That's their philosophy.
And that is what is so disgusting about all this. And that's what's so disgusting about the press, the silence in the press, is because nobody would hold them accountable. Yeah. Nobody would hold their feet to the fire. No, like I even tweeted at Scott. I'm like, that's great. You're saying that, the article is interesting. I'm like, well, what are your thoughts exactly? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be questioning them about it? Are you going to be pressing them? Mm-hmm. Well, okay, how many Black people and Asian people and whatever do you have actually working for you? Right. Is there anybody? Are there any courtiers, high-level courtiers that are actually Black and brown people? How many? Are there any in the clerical, area? They like to post these pictures of, their interns or whatever, how diverse. But I'm like, those are people at the lowest level of anything. Yeah. They are not making decisions about anything. How about the decision making at the palace? Where is the diversity chief that you claim?
Well, we know that's not happening. There's no diversity chief. That's, they made that up to pretend,
to shut people up and
people down.
Yeah,
it doesn't take that long to hire a diversity chief.
No.
It's like, if you want to, you'll find, and you have to hire a person of color to be a diversity chief. You really want somebody to really handle this, but they're not going to do so because we know there's a ban. So what are we talking about? This is going around the circle. That's not going to happen.
It's totally not. They were trying to just shut people. And even then, they didn't actually say they were hiring. They said it's something they're considering.
Yeah.
So they did not actually say they were hiring anybody.
Well, and it said it will come out in 2022. Doesn't take that long. Here is, yeah. Anything last before we wrap up?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right, great. So until next time, thanks so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.